good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm Tony Palizzi with LiveEO. Thank you all for joining. This has been so interesting so far, and hopefully we can get into a couple other things to incite some thought process here later on. We have some questions. So real quickly, again, I'm with LiveEO. I am the Vice President and Director of Sales for the Americas here. I run the operations for LiveEO Inc., which is the Americas, and companies based in Germany. Started about 2018. So we're in the satellite remote sensing monitoring and analytics side of the business. We provide multiple different solutions that are providing actual insights, if you will, for operators and asset owners. We assist these organizations in improving the top things: safety, reliability, sustainability, and operations, and lowering cost. So we work with a variety of different customers here globally, both in the U.S. and elsewhere. Those are listed down in the lower left, excuse me, and then work with a variety of different partners to assist us in delivering these actual insights, if you will, into the organization and into their enterprise. So how we do that, we have built a platform basically that takes satellite data and other remote sensing data, whether that's LiDAR data, drone data, high resolution imagery, et cetera, and we bring that into our environment through these APIs. So we have a variety of different satellite providers, for example, and a variety of different LiDAR providers that we work with. Bring that data in, and then we have to, a lot of this information comes in a variety of different formats, a variety of different configurations, if you will. So we have to harmonize that in order for it to work within the platform. And then we take using AI and machine learning, and then taking the business rules from the organization, we can develop different types of risk assessments, if you will, on the asset. So if it's vegetation, encroachments, if you will, with the distances from the trees, for example, to the conductors above and below, whether it's a variety of other different types of analysis as well. And then we deliver that through our web app, or in a lot of cases here in the United States, for example, we're delivering it directly into existing systems that the utility may have, whether it's veg management, work management, GIS, et cetera. So in this process of going from the image acquisition, getting the area of interest, if you will, where the assets are, we basically correct those assets for the utilities to get them in the right place before we do analytics. We classify that, do the interpretation, and again, provide these actual insights and a prioritization for the organization to really take action immediately. And those prioritizations could be based on that risk score. So what are some of the problems that we're facing? We've talked about wildfire. That's a huge one. There are other ones as well. These analytics that we're providing kind of go to one-to-many, assisting organizations both with the disasters, wildfires, storms, flooding, droughts, et cetera. The aging infrastructure obviously is an issue, will continue to be one as we move forward, but also in the age of electrification, seeing that the grid is going to have to increase in some projections by 3 times in order for that to get us to net zero. So the demand is obviously increasing as well. So how do we keep the lights on, if you will, and again projected to get only increase? And then the outages, which is really the main component of outages, is really from vegetation. So how do we do that? How do we look at that in a way that is more sustainable, reliable? So what is the modern utility doing today? And we take the approach of kind of the 1, 2, 3. And this is really kind of, first of all, getting visibility, knowing where your assets are. I've been working in the utility industry for about 30 years, worked with a variety of different organizations, both from the remote sensing side as well as a consulting side, and basically from a software side. But knowing especially the condition of the asset, but where is it located? What is the surrounding environment that's can impede upon that asset and cause it issues? Similar to what Jeff was saying a minute ago, fallen trees, for example, or risk trees outside the right of way. So understanding where these risks are, basically helping to plan the work estimated budgets and continuing to communicate with the community and the constituents for the utility. So basically also looking at understanding those risks. What does these risks mean? How do we translate these into custom risk scores and prioritize those based on locations automatically? We can do that, how I said earlier, how we kind of bring that through the process. And then scheduling those inspections and the work that needs to be performed, developing work units, for example, and to communicate that done in a timely manner. And then being more efficient in ecological actions, right? Organizing and controlling the work that needs to be done where it needs to be done, managing subcontractors, if you will, when it comes to providing the information and insights that go into developing these work units so you can maximize when you're out there performing whatever actions need to be taken, and implementing an ecological right-of-way practices, so cutting trees and removing vegetation, if you where it needs to be removed, and then basically provisioning that out into an application or applications, if you will, in order for crews as well as office personnel to monitor and maintain and do that kind of plan, do, check, act activity. So how are we doing that here at LiveEO and helping organizations, not only here where I'm responsible, but also globally? Jeff mentioned cycle-based. That's typical globally. It's been that way for a very, very long time. We're really kind of helping the organizations from that cycle base. If you notice in the upper left, you kind of have these activities that go up, and then they do work, and then they do activities. So there's this period of time where, as Jeff was saying, situational awareness, that you just don't have an eye on target, basically. So one way is to do that is basically use remote sensing of satellite and other remote sensing capabilities in order to keep a visual, if you will, that situational awareness and what's happening in between those times. And so going from that traditional approach, if you will, to more condition-based, and then at some point, as you iterate through this process and gather additional information and insights through that data-driven activity, become more predictive. That's kind of the holy grail where people want to go. So I've worked with organizations that have gone through this process and that are continuing. This is not a one-time shot deal, nor is satellite completely the silver bullet. It's not. You got to work with other modalities, other data, other tools, in order for this to really be efficient and effective, not only to reduce costs, but most importantly, safety and reliability and affordability as we move forward into this electrification age. So some of the things that we monitor basically and help mitigate risks is through these using remote sensing and these different types of tools. We can basically identify encroachments and identify those and then categorize them, which is the most important, which is not. Combining that with fallen risk identification, where those the high areas of fallen is necessary is there to potentially impact the line, but also dead and dying trees. So doing vegetation health and species, for example, and creating a model, if you will, and insights that show where the tree health, if you will, and the tree identification from a species perspective, identify those trees that are in stress on that are dead. So you can remove those. We did a project out east for a large utility where we identified all the hazard trees in and outside the right-of-way using these techniques and these analysis and using AI and machine learning. Then doing post-wildfire, pre and post, some flood detection, and then storm damage management. So looking where activity has happened that could continue or has already or will potentially affect a critical area on the system. So from a fire perspective and a wildfire mitigation prevention insights, some of the things that we're doing and working with organizations, utilities, and also other organizations outside the utility space, working with groups that have the same type of issues, whether it's rail organizations or pipeline or cities, county, states. In some cases, we're working with monitoring activity when it comes to health and what people do for countries. So we're monitoring Moldova at the moment, the whole country for basically health of their forests. And also moving into areas using these same analytics to monitor deforestation and other types of things like that that could have major effect going in the future. So looking at some of the wildfire mitigation prevention insights, ground cover index, fuel loads, looking not only in the right of way, but a lot of times we're doing a lot of it outside the right of way. So for example, if you have your right of way here, there's something that could be happening outside of that that may impact that asset, and vice versa. So looking at that and basically categorizing what that threat would be and working with the organizations to come up with what those risk rules are. Overstrike distance, this is another thing, where the tree could impact the line. We do both transmission and distribution, in some cases looking at substation activity as well, looking at where those dangers could happen and coming up with these insights that can be provisioned out. So moisture stress, wetness and dryness, that's another thing when it comes to doing that health monitoring, if you will, determining where there could be potential change in the water content, combining that with other information and working with other organizations that can combine like weather data, for example, and other soil data, or it could be different types of trends, if you will, that are happening, looking at not only brush, but also trees, really kind of getting a full situational awareness of you, if you will, when it comes to wildfire. Total burn area. I mean, we did a study here recently with an organization where they had a major fire. We helped delineate and basically checked against ground versus satellite, and basically saw that the burn area was much larger than it was when they actually went out and assessed it on a ground base, because we can determine the health, if you will, and where those burn areas are based on the information that's coming back from the satellite data. And there's both multiple satellite data as well, optical as well as INSAR data. So a lot of times doing some of these types of things, we're using both because INSAR data can actually go through clouds and basically see where those changes are. Fire break mapping, this is another thing, where the utility line is and relative to other natural environment, whether it's creeks, whether it's lakes, roads, that kind of stuff. So those are natural breaks, and then maybe looking at ways that the organization can either increase that or use those as means and ways for planning in the future. And then some of the other stuff on the burned area as well, looking at that kind of pre and post. Again, some of the, I guess, these solutions that we're doing, we're basically, a solution. We automate this whole process. We provide these different alerts and work orders, and working with organizations again on their critical assessments, and then applying those, if you will, to the work orders, synchronizing that. It basically enables them to get these insights, into and out to the field. From a mobile perspective, again, through our app or through other apps. Online, offline capability, this is really important because, most of these places that people are doing work are in remote areas. So basically providing that information to them so they can actually perform the work they need to. And then integrating into existing systems. One of our partners is going to speak next is Trimble. So we work with them when it comes to using their vegetation manager. So we want to be able to take these insights, provide them across the enterprise. So majority of the organizational operations within the utilities or other organizations usually consist of multiple different groups. Could be GIS, sustainability, engineering, planning, asset, vegetation management, et cetera. So it kind of goes across the board. So it is a one-to-many type of insights that can be tailored, if you will, to whatever the operation is within the utility and or the city. So we have some, our main goal really here is to, again, increase safety, reliability, efficiency, and come with more of an ecological approach. We have some data stuff up here when we decrease the vegetation-related outages. These are some numbers that we've combined over some of the customers that we've worked with so far in the last 5 years. Decreasing safety because they are increasing safety by decreasing the vegetation incidence in the right of way. Ecological component in reducing CO2 because satellites don't really produce all that much, and there's a little bit of that when you get it up in the air into space. But other than that, it's very ecological, and when it comes to sustainability, and then efficiency, seeing 20 to 30% year over year on an operational side from an OpEx. The other thing that we're doing is helping organizations working with, let's say, grid hardening, for example, or an asset management program, or whether they're introducing other technologies, whether it's SCADA or ADMS or whatever. These insights can be combined in that and then become more on the CapEx side, so you can deploy it much, much faster. So that's what I'd like to say. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'd like to now introduce Michael Presson from Trimble. So Mike, take it away.